We've done it before on the program to some extent, but we want to show you the documented, proven lies now. Because there's been enough time. We told you at the time, this is a lie. This is not true. But I want to show you the documented, proven lies that have been told, what the truth is, and how they respond to those telling of the truth. To show you that there is never any responsibility taken by this administration, and no one in the media will correct the truth. And there are so many lies. That's the other thing that you really have to take away from this. It's impossible to share all of them. It makes it difficult to know even where to start. I believe the lies that we're going to take over, and this is 11 minutes after the hour, I do not believe we will make it to the end of just the lies that we have prepared by the end of next hour. Let's start here. Let's just go with the early lies. If you catch them in an early lie, they learn their lesson, and so they don't continue to do it. But if you don't call them on early lies, they only get worse, bigger, and more dangerous. So let's start with the early lie.
The Kennedys decided we're going to do an airlift. We're going to go out to Africa, and we're going to start bringing young Africans over to this country and give them scholarships to study so that they can learn what a wonderful country America is. And this young man named Barack Obama got one of those tickets and came over to this country.
Okay, the problem is his father came to America at least a year before this program started.
There's some good craziness going on because they looked at each other and they decided, we know that in the world as it has been, it might not be possible for us to get together and have a child. But something's stirring across the country because of what happened in Selma, Alabama, because some folks are willing to march across a bridge. And so they got together and Barack Obama Jr. was born.
He was born 4 years before the Selma March.
It's the founding ideals that the flag draped over my father's coffin stand for.
His father was buried in Kenya, never served in the U.S. military. Which flag draped his father's coffin? And what ideals does the flag that draped his father's coffin in Kenya stand for?
They will not work in my White House, and they will not drown out the voices of the American people when I am president.
This is where...
Tell the lobbyists in Washington that their days of setting the agenda are over. They have not funded my campaign. They will not work in my White House.
Just this weekend, the New York Times published a list of names, a rather long list of names of people who are working on Obama's transition team or who have accepted jobs in his White House.
Okay, he broke that promise in 3 days.
And Jerusalem will remain the capital of Israel, and it must remain undivided.
The truth is that this was an example where we had some poor phrasing in the speech, and we immediately tried to correct the interpretation that was given. The point we were simply making is that we don't want barbed wire running through Jerusalem.
Okay, so it has to be undivided. No, it can be divided, just no barbed wire. But can it be a wall? Can it be a fence?
I believe in the Constitution, and I will obey the Constitution of the United States. We're not going to use signing statements as a way of doing an end run around Congress.
Okay, he's done the end run around Congress, used signing statements over 20 times.
The biggest problems that we're facing right now have to do with George Bush trying to bring more and more power into the executive branch and not go through Congress at all. And that's what I intend to reverse when I'm president of the United States of America.
Right, but no one seemed to care.
And wait for Congress to do its job. So where they won't act, I will.
Right.
And I've told my administration, we're going to look every single day to figure out what we can do without Congress. What can we do
without Congress? He was elected and then he was reelected. Why? Maybe in part because everybody who speaks out against this administration or the policies of the progressives is vilified, demonized, and or lied about.
Fox News makes a habit. It has imported the methods of George Orwell, Newspeak, where you can tell the people falsehoods and deceive them.
You actually, as Joe obliquely referred to just now, you sort of called out Glenn Beck and said that compared him to the John Birch Society as propounding those kind of views when he talks about the formation of the caliphate. I think what you're saying, you can correct me if you're wrong, is that he's kind of a nut. And I'm curious. I'm curious about whether
said that.
I'm curious about whether
I've said that, but
don't ever let me see again in life those Republicans in our hall on our screens talking about anything. These are demons.
Okay.
These are legislators who are destroying this country.
All right. So remember, you're the hateful one, and of course, you're also racist.
Light. I think this is rank racism. You know, sometimes people on the right get very upset when people on the left charge racism, but, you know, shuck and jive, that's like talking about watermelon, or, you know, for Jews, talking about Jews are greedy or the Irish are drunk.
Okay, so when the president tells Americans concerned about the border that...
Then they wanted a fence. Well, the fence is now basically complete.
It's basically complete. Well, he's right. If basically complete means 5%. How many of us tell our kids when they say, I have 5% of my homework done? You say, oh, well, you can come with us now because your homework is basically complete. But it is their new speak, to quote George Orwell and George Soros. 5% to them in new speak is basically complete. All during the healthcare debate, the lies came fast and furious, which we'll get into later. Virtually everything we told you about the healthcare bill now has proven to be true. And nearly everything they told you was a lie is not a lie. Like this from the president.
For my mother to die of cancer at the age of 53 and have to spend the last months of her life in the hospital room arguing with insurance companies because they're saying that this may be a pre-existing condition and they don't have to pay her treatment, there's something fundamentally wrong about that.
Well, what would be fundamentally wrong is the story itself. His mother was never challenged by her insurance company because of pre-existing conditions. There was some concern over her disability claim. She was treated, and when she finally came in for treatment, it was covered by insurance. By the way, she continued to receive her $85,000 a year salary plus housing and car from her employee. But don't mention any of that, because if you do, you're a racist. Shameless to use your mother's illness, to lie about your mother's circumstances to gain political advantage. But lies on health care didn't stop with just Dear Mom.
If you have insurance that you like, then you will be able to keep that insurance. If you've got a doctor that you like, you will be able to keep your doctor. Nobody is trying to change what works.
But I don't think we're going to be able to eliminate employer coverage immediately. There's going to be potentially some transition process. I can envision a decade out, or 15 years out, or 20 years.
If you're one of the more than 250 million Americans who already have health insurance, you will keep your health insurance. This law will only make it more secure and more affordable.
It's just untrue. A lot of employers are going to drop their health insurance coverage to dump people on the government-run exchanges.
One of the concerns about health care and how you pay for it, 1/3 of the funding comes from cuts to Medicare.
Right. It is important for us to make sure this thing is deficit neutral, without tricks. I said I wouldn't sign a bill that didn't meet that criteria.
They used 10 years of revenues and 7 years of spending and said, see, look, over 10 years this pays for itself.
He's cutting Medicare by $500 billion. He cut seniors' home health care by 11%.
It's a plan that asks everyone to take responsibility for meeting this challenge. Everybody.
Exempting some from complying with the new health care law.
They've been granted a special waiver from key provisions of the new law.
All this coming out in just the first 2 years.
This plan will reduce the cost of health care for millions. Instead, they've gone up by $2,200. Premiums, I think, have gone up 9%.
Still leaves 23 million people uninsured.
Let me also address a illegitimate concern that's being put forward by those who are claiming that a public option is somehow a Trojan horse for a single-payer system. A single-payer health care plan, universal health
I think if we get a good public option, it could lead to single payer, and that's the best way to reach single payer.
Nobody is talking about some government takeover of healthcare. I happen to be a proponent of single payer universal healthcare, and that should never be purchased with tax increases on middle-class families.
It may be, but it's still a tax increase.
That's not true, George. For us to say that you've got to take a responsibility to get health insurance is absolutely not a tax increase. No, but George, you can't just make up that language and decide that that's called a tax increase.
I don't think I'm making it up. Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Tax, a charge usually of money imposed by authority on persons or property for public purposes.
George, the fact that you looked up Merriam's dictionary, the definition of tax increase indicates to me that you're stretching a little bit right now.
But you reject that it's a tax increase?
I absolutely reject that notion.
But if Obamacare isn't a tax, why did the president's lawyers tell the Supreme Court it is a tax?
If they don't pay the tax, they violated a federal law.
But as long as they've paid the penalty.
If they've paid the tax, then they're in compliance with the law.
An extraordinary decision out of the Supreme Court this morning said this is, in effect, a tax.
They flipped the position lawmakers have been taking and insisted that the Affordable Care Act was a tax increase.
Oh, wow. There is so much.
Wow.
So much more. Like I said, it will go for at least 2 hours, and we don't have enough time.
Just that should be enough, though.
Yeah,
the American people should have a 5%
and we knew all that before November.
Yeah, we knew all of that. It gets much worse as we go.